Thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. The thing I'm most excited about is that you're specializing in perimenopause and menopause. You're a psychologist in the space, but you also focus on ADHD.
Yep, I sure do. I live it.
She's in Perth, so if you're in Perth, you are lucky. Would you like to tell us just quickly in a few sentences about yourself?
Gosh, where do I start? So, I mean, I've had a very different career as a psychologist in the first half of my career, which is the forensic kind of space. But this last the second half of my career so far, I've really been focused on working with women in mental health and women who are going through, I guess, transitions and challenges in life, which is life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And part of that was perinatal mental health and working with women as they adjusted to motherhood, which is really interesting for two reasons. One is because there's a lot of parallels in that kind of process of adjusting to new motherhood, first-time motherhood in particular, as there is to perimenopause. And also, I guess, because a lot of women are having babies later. And so what I was finding is some of my perinatal clients were having babies and very soon after, even while the hormones are going nuts from having a baby, we're hitting perimenopause. And that really started my interest in the perimenopause space. Like, I felt like I've really got to learn about this stuff.
Yes.
And then kind of naturally moved, I guess, into really focusing on working with perimenopausal women, because midlife women are really cool. We've got so much life experience. So, you know, there's a lot of depth to midlife women, and sadly they don't necessarily recognise the wisdom that they possess, particularly when perimenopause kind of kicks in, because you feel like you're losing your mind. But because it's there, if you can help them tap into it, then it's really exciting. And they're really, I think midlife women are really ready to claim back, you know, who they were before they became all these roles, wife, mother, and all that kind of jazz, and focus on themselves. So I would say that they're, you know, from a therapy perspective, like, it's just really exciting to work with them because they're ready to do things differently.
Typical.
This is just how it is.
I don't know if this is a hot flush or what's going on, but this is perfect timing for our conversation.
I was lucky not to have, I mean, I did have some hot flushes and night sweats and things like that, but nothing compared to what I hear about. And now that, you know, kind of on the other side, they really have died down even more. So I am lucky in that regard.
I'm in menopause now. I'm not in perimenopause any longer, and I still get the hot flushes. It drives me crazy.
My mum's 81 and still gets an occasional hot flush.
Wow, that bad news for me. And I was really interested in what you were saying earlier about women accessing the wisdom in this stage, and also looking back on their life and reclaiming life for themselves after having been a mother and a wife and everything. I saw a video the other day, it was a TikTok actually, where a woman was talking about how in some cultures menopause is considered like a rite of passage, where women are become the wise elders of the group, and they're the leaders of the community, and how it's such an important flowering stage, and they become such important figures in the community. Whereas for us, it's a shameful thing, or historically been a shameful thing. And I know that with men having dominated the Western cultures, or probably many cultures as well, I think it's been shameful because they've had so much power and women haven't had power. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your understanding of why it seems to be a trend. Is that why it seems to be a trend now? Because perimenopause and menopause seems to be a trend. It's everywhere. People are talking about it. It's in magazines. And so many people are saying, where are the boomers? What happened? Why don't we know about it from them? I think when I think about women's role in Western society in particular, I guess I've seen most generations of women making change. It's just that they make different change as things progress. So, you know, getting the vote and being able to have a bank account and a credit card in your own name, not needing your husband's name, being able to work as well and continue a career even after you've married and had children. Like, all of those have been,
I think, changes that generations of women before us have fought for.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think this is Gen X's thing. Like, this is our job to do, is to shake it up and kind of say, this is a really significant life stage, and we need everyone to be aware of what can happen and how long it bloody well lasts and all of that. And that at the end of the day, we still do, in fact, even more so have this wisdom to draw on.
Yeah.
We are a culture that values youth, beauty, fertility, which is why I think there has been a lot of stigma and silence around menopause, because menopause signifies the end of all of that.
Yes.
And none of us like feeling without value. None of us like feeling invisible. Or, well, that's not true, actually. I've met some women who have loved feeling invisible.
Yeah.
Suddenly they feel like they can move through the world far more safely. But, you know, being invisible when you don't want to be is not a fun thing either. And certainly if that means the message is you have no value. So I think it's our job as Gen Xers to change this, and we can do that because other generations of women before us have done other things, you know, to be able to put us in this position where we are educated, we, you know, advocate for ourselves, you know, and we have access to all this information now as well, so freely, whereas other generations before us wouldn't have had that easy access. So I think that is probably a key factor as well.
I absolutely love that perspective, and I hadn't thought about it before. I hear two key things there. The one is that women have done so much in the past to get us to this point, and whereas up until now I've felt like boomers could have done more, but they did so much already. And then the next, but also their conditions were difficult. The next thing I hear is that we need to start placing more value on wisdom and what the older generation can bring. So interestingly, my daughter asked you earlier, what can the Gen Zs do, or what can the younger generations do to not only help themselves as they age, but also help their mothers and aunties and even grandmothers of today? And I think that's one of the things that they can do, is start placing, and I think they do. I see a lot more. I mean, you know, think about the way, you know, my daughter's dressed, for example. She, you know, with the baggy clothes and the, you know, thinking about what she feels comfortable in, how she's expressing herself, rather than how she looks to a man or how she presents herself to a male. So I think that the younger generations are. Yeah,
I feel. I mean, I don't work with young people, but I have a bunch of them at home myself. And I do feel as though there is more support to find whatever your individual expression is, for sure, in how you present yourself to the world, which is really cool, because I think our generation and those before us were far more likely to feel the need, and probably actually have the need in order to fit in, to present ourselves a certain way. And so I think that's a really great thing that they'll bring to the table. And I think our generation and younger as well are really clearer about their place in the world, and, you know, their rights and their value. You know, in my previous private practice, which I had for 18 years, I mentioned that I sold it recently, have a lot of young people, young women working for me at that time. And they were in their kind of mid to late 20s. And even just the discussion around, do I want to have children? Like, is great to see, because it really indicates that they know that they've got choice in that, as opposed to it being just a fait accompli, which it pretty much was, certainly here. For me, in my generation, it's just kind of what you did. Fortunately, I was really happy to, and I wanted to, and I could. But there wasn't as much choice. And if you did make a choice and it didn't fit with what was expected, then you know, I think there would have been lots of questions, and I think that's really going to change as well. But I think, you know, that's what the younger generation are doing. I do hear a lot of Gen X women talking about their daughters being quite supportive of them, having an opinion, you know, resuming their interests, because they look to their mothers and their aunts and things like that, and see, I think they're more inclined to see what what's been sacrificed.
Yeah, okay. Daughters more so than sons?
I think so.
Okay.
I had a conversation with my youngest, so I've got 4 and my youngest is 16. And I've just started reconnecting with my own kind of prior interests. And he's like, wow, you're doing a lot of different things, Mum. And I said, I was interesting before I had children. You know, and
so was I.
Interesting, and I had interests, you know.
Yeah.
And because he's the youngest at 16, my eldest is 24. I've only got my youngest 2 at home. It practically gives freedom for me to be able to do that. Interestingly, some of the clients that I work with, some of the women that I work with, still need some encouragement around that. Because their mother guilt kicks in particular. You know, I'm going out to do, I don't know, book club tonight or whatever, and it means, you know, should I cook dinner? I need to cook dinner beforehand, and doing all of those things. Like, you know, it's not like I don't have that as well. I just kind of try and put it in perspective that no one's going to die of starvation in my home. They'll all be okay, teaching life skills, all of that.
They'll recognise that if they're hungry, there is a fridge.
There's plenty of food in the house.
Guilt is a massive thing for a lot of women, even without perimenopause. Perimenopause, I have found in my discussions with people, I'm not a psychologist obviously, that it's worse because they start to kick back and try and reclaim themselves. So they start to do less to try and reclaim themselves, but then they feel even more guilty, and then they have moments of rage as well, which makes the guilt even more. So I was wondering, I guess there's 2 questions in there. What do they do when they're wanting to kick back? There's 3 questions. How are they coping with the guilt? And then how do they manage the rage? How are those all? There's 4 questions. I'm going to leave that with you and let you.
Yeah, I mean, I think mother guilt really largely comes about because of the expectations that society has of us, and that we've kind of taken on board of what a mother should and shouldn't do and how they should or shouldn't be. And so I guess one of the biggest challenges that you can make is really, well, one of the biggest things you can do is really ask yourself where this guilt is coming from, and like, what are you guilty about, and who says, you know, that whatever you are or aren't doing is your sole responsibility. I'm just thinking of whether my kids watching this TikTok and stuff and what they might think, because I haven't necessarily said this to them. But one of the things that I have kind of recognised, and a phrase that I've come up with for myself, and it's really also been reinforced by women, is that we're kind of a little fed up with actualising other people's potential. Which is, I think, what mothers, you know, often do, is we're supporting all the people in our family systems, which sometimes are our immediate family, sometimes even beyond that. And let me also add, you don't have to be a mother to be still in a caring role for people. But, you know, from that, I guess that's what ends up happening, is we start to kind of think, hang on a minute, I'm investing real estate in my head, time, energy, money, in helping people's lives, you know, run well, and for them to fulfill the things that they are interested in and want to do. And I think the real shift is that we are biologically driven to be carers. That's the estrogen is known as the hormone of accommodation and servitude. Its evolutionary purpose is to have us biologically wired to care for others, first and foremost. So it's kind of a no-brainer to me that when we start seeing a decline in our estrogen, we also see a decline in that drive to accommodate and serve, which I think is the context in which we start to want to actualize our own potential more. And to do that, because time's a finite resource, money often is for people too, energy, those kinds of things, particularly when our energy's low at this stage of life, which is often, you know, it becomes far more obvious to us. Like, we have this need to fulfill parts of ourselves that we haven't for a long, long time. And so we want to kind of claw some of that back. And so, to do that, we have to set boundaries. I think it was Brene Brown, though, who said, the people who, this isn't exactly her words, but the people who don't like the boundaries you set are the people who benefited when you didn't set them.
I love that, yeah.
And I think our immediate family are often, you know, that really applies to our immediate family because they're often very used to us doing the things for them, making the family home run, making life run outside for, you know, them as well and outside the home. So, you know, I think we need to set boundaries. We need to understand where this mother guilt comes from, and it's usually from messaging. Really work out what our own value system is. And this is where it reminds me of a lot of the work that I did when I would work with first-time mums, was to really kind of help them work out what kind of mum do you want to be and what's that based on, and really try and help them recognise when it was based on some arbitrary social message versus what truly felt okay for them. And I think it's a similar process, is at this stage of life, what kind of wife do I want to be, but also what kind of person do I want to be? And that does lead to setting boundaries. It does lead to other people pushing back because they're not so keen on you changing the rules after all this time. And I think then that's about getting some, you know, cheerleading and around you, some friends around you. Sometimes it's so difficult that people come to me to try and find ways to be able to hold the boundary firm, because it's in the pushback that they get wobbly, and it's like, oh, maybe I'm being unreasonable. Oh, yes, I'm a bad mum, and the guilt does overtake them. The problem is when you give in to the guilt and you continue to do it, then you get cranky.
Very cranky, yes. But then everyone's cranky.
Yes. And I guess there's anger that is perhaps more intense than the situation warrants, but nonetheless justified. And then there's, you know, what's been loosely referred to as menor rage, which at times I think, you know, there's a distinct difference, because the menor rage can often feel like completely a bit ridiculous, like not
at the time.
No.
I think it's only at the moment it's completely justified.
Yeah, definitely.
But when you look back, you think, wow, that was a little intense, a little too much.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the emotions are heightened. We know that during perimenopause, with the hormonal fluctuation that we're going through, a lot of emotion is actually kind of magnified. I think the reason anger stands out is because it's still socially unacceptable for women to be angry. And so, you know, if we were crying more easily, which is another kind of version of emotions being intensified in perimenopause, we may not like it too much and it might make other people feel a bit awkward, but it's far more socially acceptable for that picture than for us to be angry. And yet, in many ways, there's a lot for us to be angry about.
And but even at ourselves, I mean, getting to when I hit perimenopause and I had developed this rage and this anger. I remember once my husband asking me, he had asked me this many times in the 20 years we'd been married, where's the milk? And in my head, I was like, you dumb motherfucker, it's in my fucking fridge, where's that fucking milk? That's how I was like, what a stupid fucking question. But he'd always ask me questions like that, like stupid things, like, have you seen the keys, or where are the knives? Like, you know where the fucking knives are, you know? But knowing that was an irrational, but at the same time, you wouldn't be asking me that question if I hadn't have answered you for the last 20 years. So a lot of my anger is also directed at myself for having created this situation. I could have enabled, I'm having an aha moment, I could have enabled everybody more, which would have allowed me to have more freedom, but I was too busy actualizing everybody else.
Yeah. And look, in theory, of course, we could have started that from the get-go. I mean, there's times when I think, geez, I wish I had have done that with my kids when they were much younger and more pliable, perhaps. It might have made life easier at this stage. But at the same time, you know, as I said, we've got these influences that are invisible and yet still very influential. And then we've got other things that are very visible. And it leads to us doing the thinking for other people. I mean, the mental load is not a new concept. Maybe new within the last 15 years or so. But yeah, you know, it's been around for about that long, but we've been doing it for a heck of a lot longer than that, of course. And now that it's got a name and some, I guess, credibility, I see the difference in how parents are approaching early parenting, and there is more discussion that would, you know, about mental load and more sharing of mental load and things like that. But that just wasn't part of the discussion when we were raising young children. So yes, we have actually done the thinking for a lot of people closest to us, which is why your husband says, "Where's the milk?" And, you know, I completely understand how that's come about, and I hope you have some compassion for yourself, because you kind of just rolled with what was expected of you. And, but I also understand the frustration and the voice in your head that's raging in response, because it's like, where else would it be? You know? Look.
And it's such a simple example, but when you're having those kind of responses so often throughout the day that you never had before to all those kind of questions you got asked, you know, it's no wonder that something's going to snap you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because you're in this heightened state of aggression. I'm interested to ask on what you were saying about the mental load. So do you think for the younger generation, the perimenopause is going to be easier on them, given they're not going to have the same response socially that we had, because the mental load was harder for the older generations?
I think, I mean, what I really notice is, if I look again, I'm thinking of the generation of women who kind of fought so that we could have careers, right? The unintended consequence of that, which you know, there's no way they would have fought that battle knowing and wanting the outcome that happened. And one of the outcomes was that, we've got careers, but we were still expected to run a house the way we always had. So, you know, work as if you had no family, be a mother and a wife as if you had no career. And so my hunch is we'll probably have some unintended consequences from what we're trying to achieve as well. There'll be some cool stuff, but unintended consequences, which I can't quite spot yet. But I do think, you know, I recorded a podcast earlier this morning around the Senate inquiry. Have you been aware of the Senate inquiry that's been going on? So the report was released about a month ago. It's taken me that long to get my act together, because the report is huge as well. Huge findings and huge recommendations. And there's lots of, I can't even begin to do it justice in this conversation, but one of the things that comes to mind is they really want education in high schools to include perimenopause and menopausal transition. Now, there's probably going to be boys and girls and non-binary kids listening at 13 years of age and thinking, oh, this is so irrelevant. So is, well, I was going to say so is pregnancy, but not necessarily. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff that in the kind of health education curriculum that might seem like it's completely irrelevant. But if that does roll out, that recommendation gets put into place, the seed is there. The words are there, you know, and some vague idea that hopefully, not that it's only relevant for women in their 50s, hopefully the knowledge that, these words, perimenopause, I've got to start kind of thinking about that in my mid-30s, for example. And so that, I think, is going to be a big difference, is that we haven't been informed. We've had to educate ourselves, and we're doing it when we're in crisis.
Because I didn't know there was such a word as perimenopause.
No, not at all. I worked out, after 2 years of struggling and seeing my GP and all the rest, I worked out for myself that I was in perimenopause. And it was courtesy of whinging to my kids. I was actually whinging to them about being sick of whinging to them about how terrible my sleep was. And I said to them, I sound just like Nan at my age. And my mum was a nurse, and in her generation, she didn't necessarily speak widely like you and I are now. But my sister and dad and I certainly knew what was going on for her. And so that was when the penny dropped for me. Went to my doctor and she was like, you're too young, and, you know, a whole bunch of things kind of unfolded. But, you know, I knew, but it was only by chance. And that's very unusual for our generation to kind of have a clue. So we've had to learn a lot at a time when we're most emotionally kind of shattered, we're fatigued, we've got brain fog and memory issues, and we're trying to educate ourselves and advocate for ourselves as well. I hope that is really one of the things that changes for the generations to come, that they're able to access, like they know, oh, this might be what I'm going through, and they're able to access really reliable information. They're able to go and seek health advice, whether it is from a GP or naturopathy or whoever, whatever path you want to go down. How cool it be that they know that there's those pathways that they can then go and talk to who they want to about, well, how can I support myself? So I think that'll be different.
Yeah. But I think education does so many things. One, it'll, your mother at home is going through that, so it's actually very relevant.
Yes.
But two, it'll hopefully make them less afraid as well of getting older. If they teach it in the right way, it might make them look forward to becoming a wise old butterfly. So I think there's so many benefits to putting it in education. You were just saying about friendship and how you still have very good friends from when you were younger, and the importance of those conversations, because you can still have deep and meaningful conversations and get things off your chest, especially during this time. And it's something I do advocate for in my TikToks, because I have friends that I can have those conversations with. And I'm lucky because I've immigrated to Australia, but a lot of my good friends from school and university have come across to Perth.
That's good.
And including my twin sister, but I've also made a few good friends here as well in Perth that I feel I can be very open with. But I do know, and I hear a lot from people on TikTok and other comments on YouTube as well, that they don't, other women don't have people that they can talk to. They don't have those friendship groups. I remember making a TikTok about being a part of a group of 12 women. Every month we do something different. We don't know what we're going to do. It's a surprise, but one person organizes it, a different person every month. And so many women commented, wow, I don't even have one friend to do that with, never mind 12. So what do you suggest for women out there that are in that situation?
I mean, it's a really important thing that you're bringing up. And on the one hand, I always get surprised to hear that people don't have such good friends. And then on the other hand, in my 28 years of psychology, I can say that I've met so many people who don't have those really close friendships. So, you know, I know that's a complete contradiction. And I think the reason I get baffled that they don't is it's like, how do you do life if you don't have great friends that you can talk to and be yourself with? And I think the answer to that is life becomes very, very difficult, and loneliness is a really significant factor in mental health for sure. What I think is women need women. And there's certain times, I mean, we need women in our lives that we're really close to all the time, but there's certainly periods of time when it's even more important. And perimenopause and menopause is absolutely one of them. I do feel very fortunate that I've got friendships that have spanned 30 plus years, some of almost as old as I am now, actually, because I've known them being a Perth local since my very early years, early primary and things. But at the end of the day, the benefit for me is that, you know, I've got friends who are much older, friends who are younger, and all in very different life circumstances. And that's kind of meant that I've been able to tap into those friendships and, I don't know, have different kind of conversations, but at the same time had conversations around the topics that are relevant for me depending on the stage of life. And of course, right now, and I'm spending a lot of time talking about menopause with my friends. Sorry.
And your friends will know your context as well, which makes those conversations even deeper and help you work through even more difficulties.
Yes. But I think, you know, in terms of how to establish those friendships, it does become harder when you're older, I think, because, you know, you're kind of forced together at school. So you often make friends there. Sometimes they don't last, and that's because you really maybe only were friends because you were in the same kind of environment day in and day out. You know, friendships can form from work. Friendships can also really form from the different interests that you pursue. And that can be the tricky thing though, because we have shelved our interests for so long that sometimes the friendships we have formed, if we've had children, through, you know, sending kids off to school and meeting other parents and forming friendships that way. And so for those of us who either haven't had children or, you know, have children that are older like you and I, we're not necessarily naturally meeting people to form friendships with, which is why it's so important for us to start, I guess, one of the reasons, start tapping into what are your interests? What do you want to try? What would you like to pursue? What's a hobby that you can take up that might put you in, you know, in contact and enable you to meet people with similar interests as well. That takes courage though. I know for some people they wouldn't bat an eyelid, you know, it's easy, they're confident, they'd go out and do that. But for a lot of people that might be quite nerve-wracking. If I can give a shout out to an organisation that is in Australia, it's called the Joy Community. And it was established here in Perth, but I believe it's now in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne as well. And it's for women over the age of 40, and they run all sorts of, you know, activities and get-togethers, which can really cover such a wide range of interests. And I spoke at their retreat, which they ran in Bunker Bay in March this year. And the women that I met were just amazing women, and they all had different interests, and the Joy Community actually kind of facilitates this range. You know, if you want to be playing golf, if you want to be doing yoga, if you want to be doing wine tasting, cheese making, just going out for dinner, it's such a wide range of activities, and I found them to be very, very welcoming.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So that kind of thing exists, you know, that women can tap into if they're feeling lonely and isolated. That is really awesome, because I think historically women have often been pitted against each other. So I think that'll be the root of a lot of people's fear of going into social situations or trying to make friends. But if you've got something like the Joy Community that's focuses to bring people together, you're probably safer if you have those fears. I love that. What is the role of therapy in perimenopause, menopause, that stage of life? I mean, I think the role of therapy can be quite diverse. So I often talk about the spectrum of where my clients might be at when I first meet them. And so for some, they are really struggling. Their symptoms are overwhelming them, perhaps even their circumstances are overwhelming them, and they're really, really not travelling well. And then, you know, I guess I may be meeting people where they're not quite so, you know, in a dark spot. They may have been, and they just happen to have, you know, found a way, you know, gone from crawling to maybe standing up. And then I'm meeting them, you know, where they're at. They're a lot more ready, I guess, to start thinking about, well, that was really awful. I'm starting to find my feet now. How can I reinforce this kind of so I feel even stronger? And then the next part of those, or they move towards, or people begin where it's like, I'm ready to make some change, you know. So there's this spectrum of, you know, I guess, as I said, like significant kind of mental health challenges through to I really want to flourish and everything in between. And therapy can meet people where they're at and needs to meet people where they're at. A lot of people do think that therapy is only for those who are sitting down this end of the spectrum, I guess. But a lot of coaching, a lot of positive psychology is psychology. And so there's really a place for us to be able to kind of help people move through to this flourishing, thriving kind of you know, space, which is either way, it's really, you know, it's really exciting to help anyone move further through their journey. And so therapy can well become around education. Often people who are really struggling haven't been able to advocate for themselves. They don't know which way to turn. They don't know what might be helpful. And often it really is about how can we get them doing the basics of looking after themselves, and how can we help them communicate with perhaps their doctors or their partners so that they can get more support, so that they can start to move out of that kind of really dark space. Versus when they move further ahead or they start to see us here, it's about, okay, where are you at? How can we consolidate some of the gains? How can we make you feel more anchored in who you are? Which is tricky because perimenopause is such a time of transition. So you're kind of, it's a long time before you get a sense of stability within yourself.
Because you're becoming somebody else.
Absolutely, which is the exciting part. And that's often where, you know, as a therapist, reinforcing that there's hope is really, really important. The more I look into and hear from women about what's going on for them, the more that I really recognise that this is a developmental stage. So there's things that we are supposed to be reflecting on and reevaluating who we are, what our values are, what our priorities are, the roles we want to play, what we do and don't want in our lives anymore. And so I think this middle ground is where those conversations start happening. It's too overwhelming in the early stages when we're just completely floored by what's going on. But as we move into a newer phase, those questions come very, very naturally. And, you know, they're great questions because they really lay the foundation for this next stage of our life. And that's where I guess therapy is useful, even though it might become more of a coaching kind of relationship within the context of maybe seeing a therapist, a psychologist or whatever. But it's where we're far more looking forward and really, really making decisions about what's important for who we are, how we want to be, and how we want to live our lives, and what we want in our lives and don't want in our lives. And so from that perspective, you know, that's really what I see the breadth of therapy as being able to provide.
It's interesting as you're talking, because I'm a graphic designer by trade, I see a breaking down, a deconstruction and a reconstruction as you're talking, these three phases. I
do have a coaching program, and it absolutely starts with what I call the reckoning.
Oh, really?
And then it moves into a resurrection, a reclamation and liberation. Like they're the 4 stages of the coaching program that I have. And that's drawn from my own experience and the women I've worked with. Like that just seems to be how it unfolds, you know. I definitely can see that too.
Do you have a website with all this information?
Yeah, I do. So the allabouthercentre.com.au is the website. All About Her Centre is national. So we're really trying to still build our community of health professionals. I established All About Her Centre because I got very frustrated in trying to find other allied health practitioners who really wanted to work with menopausal women. And I thought, man, if I'm finding it difficult, then someone who's really struggling is just going to give up because it's so hard. So I thought, I'll establish this platform. And then when I did my own market research trying to find the health professionals, what I really recognised is they were all perimenopausal, first and foremost. And they really wanted to be part of a community of health professionals to continue to learn more in this area and to work with clients who are going through this transition and wanted the opportunities for collaboration with other allied health practitioners. And so All About Her is kind of serving 2 purposes. It's about supporting the health practitioners to be able to do their best work in the easiest way possible. And also then in that way, it's about providing a breadth of service opportunities to women navigating these years.
That's very cool.
That's where you can find me.
Yeah. And you do counselling on perimenopause and menopause.
Yep.
And do you run workshops or anything like that?
Yeah, so well, I do the coaching program.
Yeah, okay.
I've got the next one starting in Feb next year. I do a heck of a lot, and it's so much fun. I do a heck of a lot of workshops. I do a lot of training for psychologists in this space because it's not something that we learn as part of our degree, and most of the people interested in it are around our age, and so uni was a long time ago anyway.
Before we wrap up, I just have two quick questions I'm hoping to pick your brain on. The first one is, what can young women or young girls of today do to not only help themselves to make sure their perimenopause, menopause days are better, more pleasant, but also to help their mums and aunts and grannies today?
Well, probably two key things. One is, and we haven't actually talked about it, but I really think it's important for girls and women to understand how their cycle, how their hormones influence their mood. You know, we kind of pay a bit of lip service to it, but what I definitely see is young women are far more wanting to understand how their energy, their desire to socialise or retreat, their cognitive kind of functioning really changes over their cycle. And we are cyclical beings, but unfortunately we're living in a patriarchal society, so we're kind of expected to be the same day in, day out, and that's just not how we are. Which is why it's so exhausting for us. So I would certainly encourage menstrual cycle awareness, because I think the more that girls and young women kind of understand that and start to try and implement it in their lives where they can, then that's going to have this kind of snowball effect and perhaps create a world that's a little bit friendlier for us with our cycles. But I also think, you know, kind of on that same vein is, you know, compassion. That's the word that just keeps coming to mind, compassion and understanding. So when mum's really tired, when mum's cranky, when mum's, you know, just feeling like an old woman because her body's just aching for no good reason, I think understanding and curiosity is really helpful. You know, wanting to understand what the experience is about, being curious if mum's just been a bit snappy rather than reactive, which is a big ask, I know.
It is hard,
and, you know, it's probably a really great thing for us to do with each other anyway, regardless of the phase of life we're in. Educating ourselves is really important. And, you know, again, it comes back to that curiosity thing. So if your mum is talking about this stuff, ask questions, learn about it so that you can better understand her experience, which will also help you as you kind of, I mean, you might be a long way from it, might be quite a few decades away, but it'll help prepare you for your own experience as well. There is a bit of research that's showing that millennials are actually quite nervous about perimenopause because Gen Xers have been so vocal about how awful it is. And I think, you know, it's finding that balance between it is really challenging, but with the right support, it can be a little bit easier than not having the support, that's for sure. And that it's this stage of life that we will move through, and the other side is potentially way better. You know, that we can tap into that wisdom as well.
And then my final question is, if you could leave the audience with one practice they could do, whether it was daily or monthly or whatever, to help themselves, what would it be?
It would be in some way, shape or form to be able to sit with the change. We like things to be quite clear. That's just human nature. You know, I want to be this way tomorrow, and if I have to change, I want to be that way tomorrow. You know what I mean? Today, tomorrow. But perimenopause is a long process of transition and change. And I think the more that we're able to kind of surrender, not resign, but surrender to this unfolding of who we are, again with compassion, again with grace, and with curiosity, I think we're going to, that stands us in good stead. And kind of related to that, I know you asked for one, but I do want to add that we keep evolving as women. We just keep changing and evolving, apart from every month. You know, lots of different life stages. So we are very used to change. We are very used to evolution. We are very used to, you know, kind of what that brings. And so for me, when I think about that, it provides me a way to connect to my own resilience and my own kind of capacity to roll with it. Because, you know, I've been doing it for a long time, and women at this stage have already been rolling with it for a really long time. Like they've got that within them already.
Yes, we've put up with so much. We can do it.
We can.
Kirstin, before you go, I just want to let the audience know as well. Just remind them that you are from Perth and you're in Perth, that you specialise in menopause and perimenopause. You have a website. It's all about her.
Yes, it's all about her centre.
All about her centre. It's national. And it connects other professionals as well to help women in perimenopause and menopause. And that you also specialise in ADHD.
I do, yes. ADHD and midlife women in particular. Because I love working with midlife women. So,
awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's such fun.
I hope to have you back again very soon.
Happy to.
Thank you.
Beautiful.